Alright peeps, today we're going to go through an entire week of what my strength training looks like. There are a few things to bear in mind. I wouldn't expect anyone to try and emulate exactly what I do. It is my job. I'm a personal trainer, so I sort of feel like I have to stay well-roundedly strong in a relative sense. So I wouldn't necessarily expect other long distance runners to be doing the same amount of upper body work that I do. It's also worth bearing in mind that I am self-employed and I have no kids, so I have a lot more flexibility with my time than a lot of people do. There are ways to fit quite a bit of strength training volume into a limited schedule, but I'm not going to be covering them in this video because my schedule isn't limited in that sense and I can kind of organise my life around training. So those are the caveats going in. It's kind of my job to try and stay as fit as I can, and I have the time to stay pretty fit all round. So this is generally what a typical week looks like in terms of strength training. It will vary a little bit from week to week if I've got races or if there's stuff going on, but typically these are all the sessions I try and fit in. So the week we're going to go through now is last week, and that was week 5 of what I'm referring to as the pre-Iceland block. I'll give some clues for the kind of content that's coming up. Essentially, I'm trying to get myself as fit as possible before I'm away for like 3 weeks and might not have regular access to gyms. And at the moment, I'm sort of in a strength and hypertrophy phase for upper body and kind of more peak strength power development phase for lower body. Mondays start off with a upper body session after I've coached my morning client. So at the moment, that essentially looks like 2 by 15 scapular pulls. So I do 2 sets of 15 scapular pulls. I have a little bit of a rest in between these, but it's not very long. I do warm up with some mobility stuff, but I didn't film any of that on any of these sessions. Once I've done my scap pulls, we move on to pull-ups, and I do 3 sets of 8 pull-ups. My pull-ups aren't great at the minute, so I'm having to do myo reps for usually the second and third sets, where I will have to like shake out my arms for 10 seconds and then carry on to 8 reps. But the idea is to get 8 reps in the set before I take my full rest. After I've done the pull-ups, we move on to deficit push-ups. The setup is as you can see here, and then I move on to doing the deficit push-ups. I like doing these because it just gives me a little bit of extra stretch in my chest. Once I've done the deficit push-ups, we move on to Australian pull-ups. These just help a little bit more with back strength development, and they're a little bit more applicable to climbing, which is kind of my other sport, I suppose. And these I just try and make sure I get a nice big stretch at the bottom of the movement, and then nice strong pull-up, and then a really controlled release. Once I've done those, I go and do some dips. These are still quite hard at the minute. They're quite a hard exercise, so trying to do 8 reps is genuinely quite difficult, but I feel like they're coming on okay. Once I've done the dips, we move on to pike push-ups. Not a lot of range of motion with these because I'm still at a relatively beginner level with them. I'm hoping to, as we get a bit stronger and time goes on, to just increase the range of motion in these. I finish off the workout with bicep curls and tricep pushdowns as a superset. So I do my bicep curls and then I immediately go into the tricep pushdowns, then I rest. And this is quite a high volume set. So this is a lot more hypertrophy focused than some of the other movements that I've done in this workout, but really the whole workout is kind of either on the edge or within the hypertrophy zone. With the superset, I'm basically just trying to go to failure before my form totally collapses. So if I feel like the next few reps are just going to be terrible, then I stop there. I don't try and force myself, but I will push to the point of like form failure. On Tuesday mornings, I do a little kind of nickels and dimes session. So I'll do a dead hang, a couple of sets of dead hang, just to kind of warm up a little bit, and then I will do 5 sets of supersetting push-ups and pull-ups, but each superset is a different type of push-up and pull-up. So I start off with normal pull-up, normal push-ups, and then I do a set of close grip pull-ups and diamond push-ups, and then a set of wide grip pull-ups and wide push-ups, then parallel and pseudo planche push-up, and then the last one is chin-ups and pike push-ups. It's not like optimal training, but I'm just going to do that on days where I don't have another upper body session. Normally on Tuesdays, I also do a hangboard session. I just forgot to film any of it, unfortunately. So picture of the Beastmaster 2000 hangboard that we have at home that I use to do just a few hanging exercises on, train the fingers up, get the fingers a bit stronger. And then I've also recently bought a mono duo little thing to attach to this weight tool that we have at home that I can use for more finger strength work. So that's quite a good one to do. Sometimes I'll fit extra hangboard sessions in the week if I feel like I've got time, because it's a relatively low intensity type of training on the rest of my body, because it is just hands and forearms really that's working. So yeah, I quite like fitting that in. It usually takes me sort of 15 minutes to go through that, so it's not a very long one. On Wednesdays, I have my first lower body strength training session of the week, and this starts off with some light plyometrics. I will do double-legged plyometrics and then some single-legged plyometrics using some multi-directional movement. Once I've done those, I'll move on to slightly more intense plyometrics. So we'll do some broad jumps in this case, and then I will do a very low volume of single-leg, higher intensity plyometrics. I've only really just added the single-leg stuff back in on the higher intensity side, so I'm not great at it at the minute, but we'll work on it. Once I've done the plyometrics, we move on to our back squats. Those are about as heavy as I can tolerate, essentially, for 5 reps. I'm still kind of easing back in, so I hope I can get the weight up a little bit on these, but these need to be heavy and they need to feel hard, because we're just trying to really work on that peak strength and force production with this. Once squats are out the way, I do some step ups at the minute with a bit of a power focus, because again, sort of easing back in still post ultra. My strength training's not back to where it was, so I'm not pushing myself like drastically hard with these, just a nice little explosive movement. After step ups, I do single leg extensions. I just need a lot of help with my quads. I'm a bit rubbish at downhill running, so just trying to give myself as much help as I can by doing some extra stuff in the weight room. So developing my downhill running, obviously it would make more sense to do downhill running more often. Obviously, although I do have a pretty flexible schedule, it's not so flexible that I can just fit in extra downhill running sessions on the regular. So on a Wednesday, I have to go in and coach anyway. So and I need to get my strength training session in. So I just add these things into my strength training session. It still doesn't, the overall session still doesn't take that long, like 40 to 45 minutes most of the time. So my strength session is adapted to me and the things I need. And as the summer progresses a little bit, I will try and fit more like downhill running practice in, basically. But in the meantime, I'm just doing the other bits and pieces that I can and that I have sort of more immediate access to. Finish off the Wednesday workout with some soleus calf raises. I do about 15 of these. Yeah, not really much to say. I just try and strengthen different bits of the leg, basically, over the course of the week. And so on the Wednesday session, I'll just strengthen a different bit of the calf to my Saturday session, which we'll look at later. In this particular week, I didn't actually do anything on Thursday. I normally climb on Thursdays, but we just ended up being a bit too busy and didn't get it in. So I ended up having Thursday as, much more of a rest day than I intended. And then I did my climb on Friday morning instead. So at the minute with climbing, I'm trying to approach it in blocks of training. I find it very difficult to develop goals and stuff with bouldering. I get a bit lost and I drift. So I've set myself a kind of block-based plan, and at the moment we're focusing on just building capacity and endurance. So my normal climbing session essentially at the minute looks like me doing a bit of warming up. I will make sure I'm nice and loose, and then I will try a max set of pull-ups just to see how many I can do. At the minute I can do 10 at the start of the session, and then I repeat that again at the end of the session and see how many reps I've managed to hang on to. And that has been going up each week, so I've managed like 6 the first week, 7 and then 8 this week. Once I've done that, I will do a few warm-up easy boulders, and then I will move on to the circuit wall. So I have been doing 4 reps of the circuit wall. And this is definitely an endurance activity. It takes me more than a minute to complete the circuit wall, and I've been doing 4 reps of that. This week that we're looking at now, I've managed to do 5, so that was nice. That felt like good progress. My arms are feeling a lot less pumped at the end of the circuit wall portion of the workout, and yeah, I feel like progress is being made, and I feel a lot better about my bouldering than I have done previously over the last few months. Once I've done my circuit wall section of the workout, which is really like the main bit of the workout, I will move on and just do some, for this particular type of session I'm working on at the minute, I will do some routes that I know I can get to the top of, and then I will just try and do them in a sort of nice and controlled manner, and I will climb most of the way down them rather than dropping off the wall. You can see here that I struggle a little bit to navigate this one because it was a brand new one and I hadn't looked at it before, so it took me a little bit to sort of figure out the beta for it, but we got there. So I'll do a few of those routes, and then that's kind of mostly the session really. I'll do my other set of max pull-ups at the end of the session, and then I will do a little bit of core work, and that's kind of what the climbing sessions look like at the moment. On Friday evenings, I do cover the gym for a few hours, so while I'm there, I do a little bit of coaching, but once I've got my coaching and my food eaten and all that out of the way, I will do kind of like a little calisthenics skills session. I will have to apologise for these shots that I took. They're really bad. I don't know what's going on with the lighting, but I will mostly be doing sort of like hand balance stuff. So I will do a couple of versions of the crow hold. I will do some like tuck levers. I'll do some kind of pseudo planche holds, and I will do a little bit of handstand work, nothing particularly crazy. I'll just kick up into the handstand for sort of 5 reps on each leg to try and get a feel for going up into the handstand and remembering to breathe and all of that kind of thing, and just try and practice not like kicking up too powerfully so I flail and fling myself over. And then I'll finish off that session by just doing a like max length handstand against the wall, which I can do for about 30 seconds at the minute, and then I kind of have to come down because it's starting to hurt. But that's just to try and practice breathing and try and get the kind of endurance there while I don't have the balance. Saturdays is the second lower body session of the week. This starts off fairly similar to the first lower body session. We do the plyometric stuff, the light plyometrics, and then I move on to my higher intensity plyometrics, which in this case are kind of plyo bounds, I suppose we'll call them. This is a little bit of a carryover from my parkour days. I think I like to keep this kind of like plyo hurdle type movement in to my workout. And then I tried to do a sort of little single leg high intensity plyo challenge, which as you can see I'm not that good at. Still easing into this single leg plyo stuff. Once those are out of the way, I move on to the trap bar deadlift, which is pretty heavy at the minute. I'm trap bar deadlifting about 90 kilograms for 5 reps, which because it was quite warm in the gym on this day, it was really hard work, but we got it done. After that, I do a couple of sets of deficit Romanian deadlifts. This was very hard work because it was very warm, but I really like this exercise. Once those are out of the way, I do some reverse lunges with weight. I will increase the weight over the coming weeks for these, and I generally really enjoy them as a movement. I think they're really good for most people, not just runners. Didn't film it, but I did some more single leg extensions. You've already seen a clip of those. I don't think you need to see it twice. And then I did some heavy calf raises at the end. So double-legged and with as much weight as I can tolerate, really. And I'll try and do about 15 reps of those, just to try and keep plenty of strength in the old calves. And that's really it for most of the week. I do climbing on Sundays. I didn't get around to filming anything this Sunday. Unfortunately, hit that point in the menstrual cycle where I'm in my luteal phase, so my progesterone levels are higher, I'm feeling a lot weaker than normal, and my climbing session on Sunday was pretty pathetic. Yeah, it was so bad. I managed about 30 minutes. It was genuinely really pathetic, so I didn't really film any of that because I was just feeling like crap. But that is the general structure of how I tend to approach my strength training. I do the nickels and dimes workout on other mornings as well. It depends a little bit what else is going on, but usually if I don't have an upper body session that day, I will try and fit that kind of like mini workout in. Again, that's not like an optimal form of training. It's more just to kind of like wake me up in the morning a little bit and get a few different muscles doing different things. It's not yeah, it's not optimal training. I just need to get better at pull-ups, and I feel like if I just do them more regularly, mentally, they'll feel a bit easier. I hope. All right, you might notice there's not a ton of lateral movement in my strength training at the minute. I tend to feel I have that covered quite a bit with climbing, and I do some bits of mobility work that move in a lateral plane. I think I will add some stuff in at some point. When I'm programming people's programs, I tend to try and have different movement planes in there for them. But just because I do so much exercise, I do cover the lateral plane one way or another. So I don't necessarily feel it has to be included in my lower body strength work. And I know I didn't go into a lot of detail on why I do certain movements. That would have made the video just obnoxiously long, I think. But if you have any specific questions about strength training, or if there are any specific movements you've seen in this video that you would like to know a little bit more about, you can drop a comment down below, or I'm going to leave my business email down there. So if you've got any like specific training questions, just drop me an email and ask, and I'll be more than happy to answer. Now, some people will argue the usefulness of doing strength training for running. Those people are categorically wrong. In terms of injury resistance, it's really important for most of us to be doing strength training. We live quite sedentary lives in a westernized lifestyle, so it's important to be moving weight around in different ways because most of us don't have manual labor jobs. And in terms of running, it can improve your overall performance because if you're less injured, your training is more consistent, and there is now sufficient research to indicate that lifting heavy weights does improve running economy and efficiency. Can also improve your force production and power output, which is helpful. And while I am not necessarily what we would call the fastest runner around, I am making consistent improvements, and it is happening steadily, and I'm really quite excited to kind of see where the next 5 years go, to be honest. So I mostly strength train as much as I do for general longevity and general health, but there are performance benefits there if you're consistent with it. Okay, I'm going to stop waffling on and let you get on with your day, and I'll catch you in the next one.